Feedback, although perceived as a simple process, is an essential and complex part of formative assessment practice, instruction, and everyday life. Teachers, administrators, students, parents, and all educational stakeholders need to understand the components of feedback and work to improve their practices. Feedback needs to be practiced and intentional in order to be effective and move us past the yep, nope scenario. The goal is to provide feedback that provides an open pathway to learning and can be acted upon, and effective feedback is more than a one-word answer. There are many types of feedback, and becoming familiar with them will allow you to choose the appropriate type for different situations. The feedback types described by Joellen Killian in her book, The Feedback Process, Transforming Feedback for Professional Learning, range from desistance, stop that immediately, to deconstruction, where there is a deep re-examination of knowledge. The different types of feedback vary based on who is responsible for the feedback, who is in control of the feedback, and the level of learner engagement in the feedback process. Types of feedback can also be selected based on the intended outcome. Are you just trying to stop someone from starting a fire in the chemistry lab? Or is the goal to provide enough information to allow the learner to construct new knowledge? Keep in mind that the feedback types are not negative or positive in and of themselves. Any of the types can be positive or negative. Just as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, the perception about feedback being positive or negative is in the mind of the learner. Regardless of the type of feedback, here are some tips to make it more effective. Use evidence-based specific feedback, telling the learner what they did well and what needs to be improved. The generic "great job" or "not there yet" does not help the learner improve. Feedback should be immediate. The longer someone has to wait for feedback, the more likely they are to 1. Continue doing something incorrectly, 2. Disengage from the task, or 3. Take the feedback poorly or as criticism. So, provide feedback early and often. Feedback should be aligned with the classroom learning goal and provide students with information on how they're performing relative to that goal. And it should include information on what adjustments need to be made by the students to meet the goal. Last but not least, involve the students in the collection and analysis of their own performance-based data so they know how to recognize mistakes and give themselves feedback. Being familiar with their own data also increases the student's voice in creating their pathway to accomplishing their goals. Although feedback is a necessary part of effective instruction, there are some situations where feedback may be counterproductive. Psychologist Edward Deci has identified 3 such situations: when learners feel too strictly monitored, when learners interpret feedback as an attempt to control, and when learners feel an uncomfortable sense of competition. If learners feel too closely monitored, they might become nervous or self-conscious. Learners may sometimes interpret feedback as an attempt to control them rather than guidance on how to improve. Feedback shared in a group setting could cause learners to feel like they have to compete with their peers. Any of these situations can be a source of disengagement in learning. So pay attention to the situation and know your students so you determine when it's appropriate to provide feedback and what type of feedback will be most effective. So, how do you create an environment of feedback? Encourage feedback from teacher to student, from student to student, and from student to teacher, and model effective feedback. Feedback is not a one-way street. How can you practice providing meaningful feedback? By practicing on students, colleagues, your own children, and really anyone you meet. It doesn't even have to be school-related. Just practice. Are there ways to provide feedback besides verbally with a stern look or with a red pen? Of course. First of all, smile. And here are just a few ideas. Use Google Docs to add comments and feedback to students' work. Use an online tool such as Kaizena, which allows you to record your verbal feedback. VoiceThread is another online application that allows teachers to provide verbal feedback, and the students can respond to the feedback as well. There are many others too. Just Google feedback tools for teachers and find something that suits your fancy.